Good afternoon, everyone. It's great to see a packed house today for our special meeting today, November 30th, here at noon. So with that, we will start this meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Again, I'd like to thank everybody for showing up today. It's nice to see the smiling eyes for those that are wearing masks and the smiling faces for those that aren't. So, first item on today's agenda is to consider the minutes of the November 9th and November 18th meetings. Commissioners?
I move we approve.
I second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, that motion carries. The first item that I think the majority of the people in the room are interested in this afternoon is item number 2, Newton Public Library Building Project. Suzanne?
Yes, Mayor and Commissioners, as you mentioned, there's several here in support of the project or have been working on the project itself. And so before we start talking about all the details, I would like those that are here supporting the library project or have been working on the project, which really are one and the same, please to stand. All right, thank you so much for being here and for all the work that many of you have been doing on the project. I want to go over a few details with you and kind of get you up to speed because it's been a while since we talked about the project. After approximately 10 years following a full review and a proposal to build a new library, as you recall, in 2019, we had a library task force that reviewed all the past information and the new facts about the library and reported to the city and the library board that a new library was the best option moving forward. Then the city commission and the library board entered into an agreement and worked together and requested proposals from consulting firms to plan and build a new public library at Military Park east of the existing library. The architectural firm of HBM Architects, their team was selected to perform the project tasks split into 4 phases. And in the packet, I attached the RFP that was sent out when we were selecting consultants and a copy of HBM's contract. The 4 phases that we split the project into, the first was the site selection phase, and we went through that portion. And if you recall, when we start talking about financing too, phase 1 and phase 4 were paid for by the city, and phase 2 and phase 3 are paid for by the library. Phase 2, which is the phase that we have been in, is the feasibility review and concept development. I'm sorry, we completed that. And we came to you then with the results of that. And then the phase we're in today is phase 3, and we are coming to the close of this phase, well, phase 3A, if you will, because this is a unique phase. And it kind of spans over phase 3 and phase 4. This is the portion where we're doing a public campaign. A portion of that is private, and then a portion will be public. According to Swanson House, which is the sub-consultant that's working for HBM Architects, over the last year, the Newton Public Library Foundation, an affiliate of Central Kansas Community Foundation, working with the Campaign Leadership Committee and the Fundraising Council, these are volunteers on that CLC, they have secured approximately, as of the date of my memo, it was $1.275 million, which was 49% towards their goal of $2.7 million. But I have the privilege of receiving email updates, and I got one last week and I got one yesterday, and we are now up to $1.475 million. So just since I prepared the memo, they've received an additional $200,000 towards the project. The work of the project is a never-ending process of donor identification, cultivation, and solicitation. The Where Community Connects campaign expects the goal to be reached by the end of 2022. That would be the $2.7 million. Fundraising will be refined and accelerated with the next phase of design work started by HBM Architects. I think the thing that we have to stop and pause and give credit to here is this is great work by the volunteer groups and those that have been, and the foundation that's been helping move this project forward and doing the fundraising. This is in the middle of a pandemic. They have been able to raise almost $1.5 million now. And I think a lot of credit goes out to those folks, and several of them are here in the audience today. Robert Swanson is here with Swanson House. And Robert, I wonder if you wanted to come up and maybe you can tell us about the fundraising process and how it's going and why we have a private phase versus a public phase. Just give a little bit of information to our commissioners today and the public that's listening.
Well, I think you've summarized this pretty well, Suzanne. It's good to be with all of you. Yes, kudos. Congratulations need to be given to a group of volunteer leaders and a few others who have been engaged in the campaign process. As Suzanne just said, you're actually a little ahead of schedule than what we had planned you to be at this point in time. And by this time next year, we would expect the goal to be reached in December of next year. And of course, if we can raise more, we'll try to do that in this process. The fundraising process is sort of this never-ending process. You heard it from Suzanne. It is the process of donor identification, cultivation, solicitation, and appreciation. We like alliteration, right? So those are the 4 steps, and this is just a never-ending process, until we get to the goal. And the last couple of weeks, or the last 7 days, I guess, would be the answer. Lots of good news. We would believe progress would continue. Also today, of course, we are interested in your approval and moving forward with design work on the library. As we push into the next phase of the fundraising, we're going to have more donors who probably ask more questions more specifically about the building unto itself. And so the timing for the design work picking up and moving forward is important from a fundraising standpoint as well. Suzanne mentioned a quiet phase and a public phase. These are standard strategies in fundraising when you're trying to do multi-million-dollar campaigns. No one's too excited when you say you're going to go raise X number of dollars and we say we're at 0. Right? People are more interested, pay more attention when we can say things like we're already at 50% of goal in this process. And so as we move into 2022, quote unquote, the public phase of the campaign begins. And to the extent people haven't heard a whole lot about it, in 2022 you'll hear a lot more about it. So I'm happy to respond to any questions that you might have.
Any questions for Robert?
Thank you for all your leadership.
I think I'm just thinking of one as you were speaking. So if I hear you correctly, it's possible that someone or someone's may hold off in giving, maybe based on waiting for some more specific details, maybe that something that might reassure them of what is happening.
Yeah, not just reassure them, but everyone kind of likes to know more. Some donors like to know more details, and we do have some significant funders yet to be approached in this, and they do tend to ask more specific questions in this process, and the work of the architect firm helps us address some of those kind of questions in the fundraising.
All right.
One of the things that I kind of have understood, learning from the folks that are working on the project, is that once they know that we are moving forward with the project, we will have additional people come to us or come to the group that's doing the fundraising. They want to know for sure, that the city is, yes, going to move forward with the project. They also want to know a lot of the pieces that the architect would be working on. Are we going to have this room and this thing and this space? Because those are important to them if they're going to provide some of their personal funds towards the project, which is what the fundraising piece is. Then they're more willing to give once they know those things.
And I think you probably put into words what I think now, as I was trying to ask, is once we've committed to move forward, then I think that's probably, I'm going to use the word reassuring again. Maybe it concretes it for someone.
We like to use the phrase that puts more people in the believable zone.
Ah, okay.
It's going to be done.
Better way of putting it.
It's going to be done.
Okay.
You've done lots of fundraising And so what's your experience with people actually making pledges and them actually writing checks for the pledged amount? Is that a pretty high percentage?
Extremely high, less than a 1% attrition rate.
Okay.
Less than a 1% attrition rate. So when people say they're going to do something, 9 times out of 10, they say yes. So 99 times out of 100.
So I guess that another question then, of that 1.4, almost 1.5, how much of that is, or can you share that, is pledges versus actual?
I don't have that information on my fingertips at the moment, but a significant portion of that would be cash in hand at this point in time.
But as I understood it, Robert, the bulk of that is all written commitment that they've received in writing that they would commit, not just verbal commitments.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Robert.
Thank you.
So the public campaign, Phase 3 of the project, which is ongoing, and it's unique because it will continue as we go to Phase 4 and we move forward. In Phase 2, a preliminary concept was developed with graphics produced to support the ongoing fundraising campaign. With fundraising progressing as planned, it is now pertinent to develop the design for the Newton Public Library in order to ensure the design is in alignment with the budget and fundraising goals. It will also support the fundraising campaign by ensuring that designs presented to the community closely resemble the finished product and will allow the CLC, that's your volunteer group that's getting the fundraising done, to fully explore and appropriately incorporate all possible naming opportunities. Your question, Kathy, was right on cue for what we were talking about here.
Thank you.
The work that would be performed in the next phase would be done by Peter Bullock and HBM staff, and Peter is here today too. This is going to be broken into 5 parts, which include schematic design, design development, construction documents, bidding, and construction. And the first 3 parts are what is considered in the design phase. Each phase builds on the previous phase, adding detail as selections and decisions are made. Peter, you want to come forward and talk to us a little bit about the different pieces of this and how you'll go about it and why it's important for us to get all of the details ready?
Sure. Yeah. Well, good afternoon, and thank you for having me today. It's a very exciting topic for discussion. I think the first thing to state is that we strategically worked together to put this project in phases so that it would develop in a very reasonable way to understand all of the objectives that the city and the people in this community really would like to have, and then instill the confidence by providing information to gain the support of the fundraising. The Phase 4 that Suzanne is talking about today is one where our firm, the architectural firm, will do all the documents, the design and the documents that are needed for construction. Why it's very important to parallel that with the rest of the fundraising campaign, and again, to your question, is that to demonstrate more about what will be in this project so donors can have an opportunity to make a pledge or a donation towards a specific thing that interests them. And our work, you may recognize the renderings that have been done to date are very conceptual. There's a lot of work yet to be done to support the fundraising and what the end product will be, but also in the technical aspects of the project so that the estimating of the design and the ultimate construction matches up with the fundraising efforts. The last thing we want to be at the end of this year is have a fundraising goal that isn't aligned with the ultimate design objective of the project. So the phases that Suzanne mentioned of schematic design, design development, those are further development of the concept design, bringing together all of the spaces and all the program, the collection of the library, the programmatic aspects of the library into more focus. And then the next phase, construction documents, is where the details for the construction get put together so that by the end of that phase, you can move into the bidding phase. Our timeline on this is that targeting the November of next year to be at that point where bidding can happen for construction. And that dovetails with this public phase of the fundraising. So There is yet another approval process that will happen at that stage in November, where we'll have completed the designs, the fundraising will have completed their efforts, and then the decision can be made to move into the construction phase.
Just like we do with any of our projects, and you've heard me say over and over again that I like to bid projects in the December, January timeframe because contractors are trying to get their schedule full up for the next year. And that was why we kind of scheduled this to be completed in November, so then we could move forward to go out to competitive bids in the December timeframe. And remember, before we get to that point, the architects are getting all the plans ready, and they're looking at major building materials and all the pieces that are going to impact the pricing on this too. And they'll have an estimate for us of where we think we're going to land with the cost of the project. And at that point in time, we start looking at, okay, how does this align with the budget? How is this going to work for us to be able to move forward with the funds that we've raised, the funds that have been committed by the parties? And then you will receive all of that information, and you'll have the plans that will be set so that we can build something that we can afford. And at the same time, he's going to be working with library staff, and we have a new director. Carrie Cusick is here today. And so there's some changes going on at the library. And as you know, with the pandemic, there's been a lot of changes to construction material costs. And that is certainly impacting any construction project that's going on right now, and that will be considered as Peter and his staff go through the process.
Right, that's another very important point to parallel the fundraising is because the impacts of the pandemic have raised labor costs and some material costs and some material shortages. So as we're continuing to design, we can make sure that that design is adjusting in line with the fundraising. If we were to wait till the end, we wouldn't have that opportunity to make those kind of adjustments to keep the project parallel path developing.
The architects will submit plans to us, the city, like any other architect would for any other building project that would be going on in Newton. And our building inspection staff will review that to make sure it meets Newton codes, because we follow our own rules. We want to make sure anything that we're going to build as a city is going to meet those. So there's a time frame that we have to get that all rolled into, and we get all of that taken care of before it gets brought back to you in November. So this takes 12 months to get a project this big moving forward. Any other questions for Peter?
Well, I guess I have to ask this.
Sure.
I appreciate you allowing me to ask these questions because it's very helpful with what we're looking at, but it's just good to understand because I don't profess to understand a whole lot about that. But it sounds like that's an enormous challenge as you move forward, as you're looking at funding and design. So let's just say this is just, and if I'm off the tracks, just tell me. So let's say you get down the road 3 months from what might be the end, and you know what you have. What happens if is that when you have to start really making more final decisions? So that, let's say that, and then what happens at the end if a whole bunch of money comes in?
Sure.
So how do you, I'm just curious as how that works out. You probably have to stick with what you've already decided, or can you make...
No, so I think the first part of the answer to that question is that, as Suzanne mentioned, there's been a lot of impacts to the construction market today. And as we design, if we are understanding the fundraising at that moment, we may be able to increase the project a bit to accept some of those changes we want to do, or we can pull back on some things to align it with that fundraising. Now, the decisions that you make are not final, because what we can do as part of the construction documents is design what are referred to as either add or deduct alternates to the contract. So even if you get to the very last minute and the design is all completed and a major donor comes in and wants to pledge donate $500,000 or $100,000, we're then able to take some of those add alternate ideas that we had and move forward with them.
Wow. Okay.
In the same fashion as, if there's something that spikes in cost, we can maybe back up on that. So I hate to use the word really final. I think more appropriate is the idea that, I keep using that word, paralleling the fundraising efforts, because that will keep everything, as the team is progressing forward, in alignment.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you.
And as commissioners, you've seen us bring to you bids that have alternates as well. And we like to use alternates in the bidding process too, maybe for specific material choices on some of the, whether it's interior or exterior finishes. We may have bid alternates so that we keep things competitive through the process too, so that we aren't just stuck with one specific type. And then you may have vendors or specialty contractors then that will have to really sharpen their pencils as we get down to those specific details. So add alternates is something that we use quite frequently, and it's helpful in this process when we're seeing, you know, prices going up and down on different types of materials as well.
No, I've seen that in the things that we've done. I just wasn't really envisioning that with this. It sounded like it might have to be different, but you've explained that very well. And you too, Suzanne, thank you very much.
A great recent example of an add alternate was this spring when we were constructing the pool, and we were able to add in that fourth run-out slide because the budget allowed for it towards the end. So that would be a good recent example of
Okay.
something very similar.
Okay, thank you.
What, I know you can't say definitively because bids haven't gone out and prices haven't come in, but what's your gut feeling about, you know, the original renderings and the square foot? Let's just say it's 30,000 square feet footprint, and that was a couple of years ago. So now in today's prices, what's your gut? Is your gut telling you that, you know, it's probably going to be a building that might be 10 or 15% smaller because of pricing and because of our budget?
Right. Well, actually, it's 25,000, the current concept design. And yes, there is the potential maybe for square footage adjustments. It could go up, it could go down a little bit. But I think more appropriately would be looking at material changes that don't diminish the quality of the building, but economize on the cost of some of those products. So we would look to do those type of adjustments first before looking at a size adjustment. You know, right now we have a concept that's got a lot of glass and some stone, and, you know, material costs fluctuate, even if it weren't the pandemic, fluctuate over the course of a year's time. And there are a lot of other materials that could be chosen. So this next phase of getting really into the design, we'll look at a number of different opportunities that could provide a quality, say, just the exterior finish. We'll look at opportunities, what might be the best cost-effective approach that gives the desired, you know, outcome, expectation. And I think, you know, what we've seen is supply shortages. I mean, that may influence material choices too. You know, a lot of some of those things are things you don't see, like there's tremendous shortage on rock wool insulation, for instance, right now, which is the primary insulation you might use in a building wall system. So we would be looking at, well, what are the other alternatives we can use in those cases? But they'll all have cost implications. And so that's the way we can kind of move forward in keeping an eye on the project as it develops so that it's matching the fundraising abilities.
The other thing that ties in with that, Commissioner Kane, in response to your question, is while Peter's looking at how the building is going to be built and out of what materials, Carrie and the library staff have also been looking at, okay, as the library moves forward, what portions of collections do we maybe not need any longer? And how might that change the size of the library? And how might we be able to use a space that is for kids on these days of the week, but for some other activity some other time? And so some mixed use of spaces and decreasing of collections helps change maybe the layout and the size of the library too. And so all of that is being reviewed at the same time, because remember, we saw some pretty drawings of what we think it's going to look like or what we'd like to shoot for. But that is really rough, fancy sketches. And now we have to have the actual construction drawings that are going to support the operations of our library staff and be buildable.
And just one more note on this size idea of the project. The building that they're currently operating in is really difficult. It's 2 floors. It's efficient in terms of its functional layout. So you can do a lot with a new building that's properly designed and functionally better laid out, even if you had to adjust that size a little bit as it develops. So I think the idea that Susan is mentioning, again, continuing to talk through the programmatic aspects of what is really wanting to happen in the building is going to influence that ultimate end size of the project too.
Flexibility will be key, I
Yeah.
think.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Other questions?
Not a fan.
Thank you,
Okay,
Peter.
thank you.
So with that in mind, the City Commission is now being asked to approve moving forward with Phase 4 of the project by authorizing staff to give written authorization to the consultant, HBM Architects, to move forward with the work. And that's as per Exhibit C of the existing contract we have with them. We kind of laid this out knowing we were doing things in phases. And remember, the financial implications here is Phase 4 is going to cost $880,000. Some may say, boy, that is a giant number, but when you look at, we're looking at, over $8 million project, there's a year's worth of time of more than just Peter. He has multiple staff that are going to be putting all of this together and making sure it meets spec and it's a safe design according to our code. And the total cost of the building project was estimated to cost approximately $8.5 million, and that would be funded by the city, and the Newton Public Library would be contributing $1.3 million. That's over time. That's annual payments of $65,000 over 20 years, and then private donations of approximately $2.7 million as established through the fundraising campaign. So remember, this project is something that is in our capital improvement program. And so we have had it laid out for the city to fund a portion of this. And and our portion, our cost, the city's cost, is expected to be bonded with annual debt service payments paid by the city at large. And so if commissioners are ready to move forward, we would ask that you would authorize staff to move forward with Phase 4 of the project.
And just
Well,
one, oh.
No, go ahead.
Okay. Are you going to ask the question?
Just give us that number so that we all refresh our memory what our commitment was back then for the city's portion of it.
Phase 4, the $880,000 is our cost.
I understand, but the total cost that we committed at that time was around $4 million and some change.
4.5. I think.
4.5.
Yes, yes.
Okay, I just wanted everybody here to understand
Right.
that clearly.
And that $880,000, correct me if I'm wrong, would be part of that.
Part of
that
That's what I
total
was
cost.
asking. Okay, all right.
It's a
Yep.
piece of that total cost.
Okay.
What was the cost of Phase 1?
I don't know if I have that here. I can pull it out.
Get it at 10,000 and then 32? Or no, sorry.
It was 35.
Yeah, 35.
Phase 1 was 35, yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, I have some questions. I don't know if anybody else does as well. I want it to be known, maybe, especially to everybody here, the audience listening, and even those online, is that I'm in support of a library and doing it. I have concerns about the cost commitment the city's making now with where we're at on fundraising, and I get everything that has been said about needing to have the plans and all that. I can appreciate that. It's really hard for me in my business to bid a project without knowing what's going to happen in the project, so I get it. But, the city will be committed then with that $35,000, we'll be committed then $915,000 to a project that at this point, it's not a definite, there's no start date on the project, right? We don't know that it's going to happen. I think to me, there's a lot of variables. I understand the rate of people not actually giving is 1%. I would hate, though, for us to be the project that changes that number. A lot of factors, death, people having some kind of financial issues, can't commit, or they can't do what they committed anymore. The cost that we've learned in the past year and a half, that cost of material is hardly able to be bid and kept for any long period of time. Some cases less than 2 weeks, for projects that get bid. And then I think the question still stands, if we're only committed at 4.5 million, what happens when either it's not raised, construction costs go up, there's certain parts of the library that I think in a new library for 2020, whatever it gets built, 2022 or 2023, that we have to have. I think we have to have some of those maker spaces and computer project spaces, but You know, there's a certain point where we can't cut any more out of the project should that cost, so we would have to add on. I mean, we could, that's a possibility. What happens then? You know, we're committed at 4.5 million, the city is, should this project go through. So, I mean, it's a hard thing for me today to commit to the $880,000 expense right now. I was hoping that, you know, and I appreciate the extra amount, at least puts us over 50. What I was going to say was that we're not even at 50%. Now I can say we're at 54.6. I wish we were much higher than that right now. I know that we're not, but, and the word secured is used in the document that these funds have been secured, but am I understanding correctly that secured means that there's likely a written agreement at least that that person will give that amount? Well, is that a legal document? Are they required to give that? So.
Secured means they have, it's written commitment.
Right.
And again, you and I have had this discussion before. I am no expert on fundraising, and I'm getting all of my information from our fundraising experts. And that's the process they go through normally, and Robert has spoke to the attrition rate.
Yeah, and I mean, I appreciate that, and you guys have a job that I would never want to do, that's for sure. But I think just for internal discussions, it's concerning to me that, you know, the city has been in the position before where we've committed to do stuff that didn't come through, and we were stuck holding something for a long time. $915,000 is a lot to be committed to when we don't have an insight in mind right now. So I don't know if there's anything that could be said or done to take away that fear, but that's where I'm at right now.
What is the
I
life?
would correct, the $35,000 has already been spent.
Correct, but we're still, I mean, we're going to be 915,000 after today if this passes.
Right.
Yeah.
Is the 880 part of the 4.5 million?
Yes.
Okay. And the 880, is that for all services clear through the completion of the project?
Yes.
So as we go, if we communicate properly, then there will be a point in time where he'll have a number that won't be like, you know, we maybe haven't bid it yet, but it'll certainly be a better number. So there'll be a point in time where we have a pretty good idea. Will we have to go out to bid then before we'll still get an engineer's estimate of some time?
You'll have an architect's estimate this time next year before
Right.
we would go out to bid.
Okay, and how much would we have spent by the time we get to that number, roughly?
The 880, right? Peter, you want to come forward?
But if we haven't started construction yet, we wouldn't have spent the whole 880.
No, correct. So there's about 20% of the 880 would be for the construction phase observation of
Oh, I'm
the
sorry,
A&E
didn't
team,
understand your question.
which would be after the approval to go into construction.
Okay.
But also the estimating will happen at intervals along through those phases of, so there will be another estimate at the end of SD, there'll be another estimate at the end of DD, there'll be another estimate at the end of CD. So there'll be 3 opportunities to understand more in detail the true costs of where the project is headed.
Okay.
You know, I think in our industry, it's not typical to have kind of stopping points at those points because it's a fluid process.
Sure.
But if something were unreasonable to happen, certainly there's changes that could be made in the progress of the project.
See, I don't think we plan on stopping, ever.
Right.
It's just a matter of if things go upside down on material costs or whatever.
Right.
Now, you do a lot of this type of stuff. So when you come up with an estimate, it's usually plus or minus 10% either side.
Correct.
I
Well,
mean, you're obviously good at this, or you wouldn't be standing.
Right. Been doing it for 45 years and many libraries. Absolutely. And within the estimating, too, there are contingencies built in.
Right.
For, you know, those things as well. I also should maybe clearly state that there are a lot of opportunities to make changes if funding doesn't come through to the point where we know it or we think it will. You know, I think that is, while it's not a secure absolute, it is another level of kind of confidence that you can say that this will happen It's just a matter of aligning it with that funding.
Yeah, and I think that where I'm at is that at some point we have to, I'm afraid that we're going to start losing things that are necessary for a new library to be relevant in the day that we live in. And I don't want to get to the point where we are not incorporating those things at a cost-saving measure. So for me, it's kind of like a go big or go home thought. And I'm not necessarily saying no today. I'm not no at all to the library at all. I'm 100% on board with the library. I'm more of a, can we revisit this when we have some more dollars committed to the project? And I know that's not what anybody wants to hear in this room, but to me, it's a good financial practice for us as the city, kind of an internal discussion again. Is there a contract once we sign for that 880 that we're committed to paying that? Do we have a certain amount of time, or what's the deal on that?
We've already entered into a contract that anticipated these phases. There are certain provisions in the contract where if it stops mid-phase.
So what happens if
Yeah.
we say no today? Because I don't ever remember us talking about that contract.
We did that back in.
That may have been before I was on the commission, but
It may have,
This was the big special meeting that you all had at Meridian Center where Peter was, I believe we Zoomed him in. Do you recall that? It was kind of a blur because it was in the middle of the pandemic and we had 2 other special meetings that day
Sure.
about mask ordinances.
Yeah.
Do you recall? We had
Oh,
to
yeah.
stop one
I remember the
meeting.
mask ordinance hearings, yeah.
I remember those discussions. That's why I bring it up. It was that same day.
Okay.
And that's when we met and they sat down with the library.
I
board.
remember
That's
the
when we-
meeting, but I don't
yeah.
remember us being committed to this $880,000 at the beginning of this
No,
you're
project.
not committed
You're not.
to.
So what if we say no today?
You have, there's no,
Are we gonna
I don't think
get-
any time restriction on deadline today.
Okay.
You committed to, you outline these phases that essentially every phase you're going to say, yes, go forward.
Okay, I understand that,
not
yeah,
what-
when we say yes to phase 4, I understand that we're on the hook for that money. At least we're committed to it up to a certain point, right?
Right,
Yeah,
exactly.
I understand that part, okay. But if we said no today, we're not going to get a bill from HBM for.
No.
Okay, I'm
Phase
sorry,
4
that's what I
doesn't-
thought I heard.
Phase 4 doesn't go forward.
I'm sorry.
Until you all approve it.
Okay,
And
thank you.
phase 4 is spilled out over the course of time as well.
Right.
not like
It's
an
not-
Sure,
immediate,
oh, no, I
expenditure.
know, but once we pull the trigger, we're committed.
Well,
Likely you are, but you're not.
you're
It's
not.
not an all or nothing thing.
No.
It's the work that they do.
but
per
they
the
send
phase.
intermediate billings
yeah,
as the work
yeah.
is completed, but we are not on the hook for them to complete it if we decide to halt it at some point.
Right, you
Right.
could always,
Within
the
that
contract
timeframe.
is set up so that you could stop the contract at any time for any reason.
Sure.
Another add-on question to what Clint's saying is, have you had a library project that's structured similarly as far as fundraising, public-private, that has been abandoned or stopped because the funds weren't raised and then the city was left holding the bag?
No, not at all. In fact, there's a great example. We're just moving into a major project in Charleston, West Virginia. It's a $32 million project. $10 million was city-funded. The remaining was privately funded. And the project is continuing to be embellished with additional funding. And what we've seen in most cases, or in all cases actually, we've never had one that has been abandoned because of the inability to complete it. We've seen more the opposite, where it gains more momentum. And so those embellishments in this project in Charleston that's being done are things that can be incorporated into a flexible plan library for more enhancements. Like I think, Mr. McBroom, you're mentioning, you'd hate to have a library fall short of meeting the needs of a 21st century library. What we see rather is things continue to get enhanced over the course of time. So.
On the alternates, are you asking for construction alternates as well to allow bidders to bid alternative design materials, such as concrete block or monolithic pours?
Yeah, there will be a number of those things considered. Working through that process, when we get a third-party estimator on board, that's really where the opportunities to identify other alternatives that could be cost-saving measures, but you ultimately don't know what those are until you get those bids in. And so to develop those alternates is prudent, and then you have that opportunity to select at the very end.
I think it's important to develop a plan and to work that plan. we can often get into analysis paralysis where we start playing the what-if game all the time. And I think the big what-if is what if our community answers the call and actually funds this project to the level that it needs to or beyond. And I think that that's an alternative problem that we are facing down the road. But what I don't think that we can afford to do is to table it and see what donations come in, because my concern would be the opposite of what Commissioner Valentine's question raised. You have people who have already made those pledges or wrote those checks, understanding that the project was going to be moving forward, and then should it get stalled, then I think that 1% actually balloons to even a bigger probability of quote-unquote default.
The other thought that I have, I'm always a big picture guy. I always like to go to the end and look at it. And I know that, you know, we have a way for the $4.5 million for the city's portion. When those bonds get paid out at Sand Creek Station, and there's 600,000+ a year, that's budgeted for that. And then those funds, you know, a portion of that can be allocated to pay for the bonds for our $4.5 million portion of it. And I trust this process. I have similar questions as Commissioner McBroom, but I also trust this process and know that based on the history of how this has been done over years, that I think the kind of people that support a project like this are pretty dependable. They're citizens who are pretty tied into and hooked into their library, and they see the great benefit. So I trust that process, and I also know we have a way to pay for it. It's not like we're just going to go scrambling for ways to make our bond payments, because there's already a big picture plan on how to do that. So I for one, I trust the process.
Mm-hmm.
So any further discussion?
I don't think so.
So you need a motion?
Yes, please.
So I would move that we authorize staff to move forward with Phase 4 of this project.
We have a motion, Commissioners. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Let me just say, I hope that everybody in the room can come back and tell me that I was wrong. I want you guys to understand that.
I would say that if you're worried about the library being built, once a public campaign opens up, open your wallets.
And we just as staff want to express our heartfelt thanks to all of our consultants and to our citizens and to the board members who have all worked very hard on this project and put their heart into it. And also to you all, not only for your leadership, but asking these really tough questions like Commissioner McBroom has put out there. We know it's been no secret that some of our predecessors, both staff and commissioners, they tried to make really good decisions with the information they had in the moment, and some of those have not panned out well for the community over time. And that's made us that much more cautious. And so I appreciate the fact that you all are such good stewards of the public money. And so we just, please understand that this group they're really great at working together and finding those compromises. So we just want to express our appreciation for that.
Thank you. Thank you for the good discussion. I think that's important.
Thank you.
You guys have to stay for the rest of the meeting or we'll change our minds.
Awesome. I don't see Zach, but the next item on this afternoon's agenda is to conduct a project performance public hearing for the CDBG CV-3.
Yes, sir. And we will kind of tag team this a little bit. This is Crystal from Ranson Financial, and I'll let her start off. And then Ms. Donna and I will fill in any information on Zach's behalf.
Yeah, Mayor, Commissioners, thank you for having me again. Crystal Hennon, Ranson Financial. I was the grant administrator for your CDBG CV-3 funds, your COVID business funds for your businesses here inside the city limits. So we need to conduct a public hearing for your closeout for this grant portion. So if you can go ahead and follow your process, then we can go ahead and discuss it.
And just as a reminder for the benefit of the audience, that was $150,000 that was awarded to our community. And for all of those businesses that qualified. They were in business and kept a certain number of pupils employed during the pandemic and the emergency timeframe. Of those that applied, we had some that weren't qualified, but we ended up with, I'm sorry, remind me, 24 businesses, and each business received $6,250. So, and that money went straight to the businesses in our community, so we're incredibly grateful for those funds.
Yeah, and in our public hearing, we will discuss a little bit more in detail.
Very good. Well, I hereby formally open this public hearing at 12:44 p.m., November 30th. I would invite any individuals to step forward, state their name and address, and their comments in regard to this item.
All right, fantastic. So we are just here to discuss your CDBG CV-3 COVID business funds for the City of Newton. You were awarded $150,000. This money was distributed to 24 businesses here inside of your city limits. I had a great time meeting a lot of your people and eating some wonderful food. I had a good time in your city. We were able to help out 24 businesses that were in desperate need of some help due to the COVID crisis. These businesses have been very thankful. I've gotten a lot of phone calls and emails, and they've asked me to express their thankfulness to you guys for being able to apply for this, win this grant, and help your businesses here in town.
Awesome. Well, at this point, I would declare the public hearing closed and bring the discussion back to the bench. At this moment, I need to ask all commissioners, have you had any ex parte discussions regarding this matter?
No.
Thank you. All righty. Well, we would need a motion.
I will make a motion that we accept, or what are we making, for close the public hearing, or what are we doing?
No, the public hearing has been closed.
Okay.
We're just going to close the project.
We're just,
Okay, I'll make a motion that we close the project.
Second.
we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
I
Hearing
started
none,
saying
motion
that,
carries.
I started saying that and looked at number 3 and I said, well, there's nothing on there that tells me what we're doing. I knew it was good. I knew we were good to go. I think that's great. I just want to say, I frequent several of those businesses and I think it's great that we were able to do that and I appreciate your help on it.
Very good. Next item is to consider a notice for a public hearing to amend the 2021 budget. Donna?
Yes, we have some cleanup we just need to do for this year. We're going to be amending 5 funds. The general fund is to receive the ARPA funds. There's no expenditures that will be changed. Debt service fund, we need to account for the current refunding issue completed this year in November, which was $6,625,000. The Prairie Fire RHD fund, as you know, when they pay their taxes, they get that money back for a set number of years. And they actually had to pay more taxes, so they get more money back. And we didn't quite, it's just an estimate because we don't know for sure after the first few years. We need to change that a little bit. The CID Holiday Inn Fund, where they get a special sales tax of 2% just in their area to help pay for any, some renovations they did on their hotel. They are getting more money. It's over expected, so we need to increase that. And that would have the revenue and the expense increase the same. It's kind of, it's a wash. The lastly is the golf course fund. And due to supply chain issues, they have pre-ordered a lot of chemicals and fertilizer because they're a little bit worried about next year. They did have a lot of high play volume this year, so they're way over budget on the revenue. So this is, we could even went higher if we needed to, but we are going to up that by $100,000 in the revenue and $100,000 in the expense for stuff like that. They also paid for a pump house repairs that were unexpected, and a big tournament came to town, and they wanted to buy all their product through them, so they had to order all the product, but then they got to sell it all. So that helped also, so that was very nice. So we have to follow the same procedure that we would just for a regular budget during the year. We have to have a public hearing, and that's what we're doing is scheduling the notice of budget hearing for the 14th of December here at 7 p.m. at your regular meeting. And we'll just open it up to anyone, and then we'll close it, and then you can approve the budget at that time. So you just need to approve the time and date.
I'd make the motion that we approve that time and date.
I second.
Thank you, Commissioners. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Donna. Next is to receive a request to close Main Street. Suzanne?
I think Denise has this one.
Oh, yeah.
I'm going to take this one. So we have a little bit of a change in this request. I sent you an email earlier this morning just so you had a heads up. Because the 24th is a holiday, the 23rd is a holiday for the city also, just because it falls in a certain way. It would take a little bit of time to get everybody here, and a lot of people are on vacation, and it takes about five people to close down Main Street. I don't know if you know that. So we have talked with Greg Knoll from the gathering, and they have had this as a plan B to use the 6th Street parking lot for their event, and they graciously are wanting to do that instead. So that would be to close the parking lot on the 24th from noon until 9:30. And we would set up the barricades on the 22nd. They will set them up at that point. We just bring them out.
Very good. Do we need a motion? All right.
I move we approve their request.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I second.
Awesome. Have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. All righty. The next item is summer crossing water and sewer paving.
Yes, Commissioners, in June of this year, Ron Harder, who is the developer of Summer Crossing Addition, this is located south of Wheat Ridge Drive and west of Old Main, he brought in petitions for public improvements to, well, you see on the screen, there's paving and drainage. It's the, yeah, that one. There's the storm sewer and then the street for the cul-de-sac. And then there was petition for sanitary sewer, I think is the next one, and that's the lines shown in green. And then a water line is the next one. And once the petitions were received, when he brought those in June, then the work of designing those projects takes place. And so those are designed, we've got state approvals on everything, and we are ready now to put the projects out to bid. And so we'll put the projects out to bid, assuming that you approve the plans and specifications, and we would recommend a bid opening date scheduled for December 21st at 2 p.m. And there'll be 3 separate projects, but we'll bid them all at the same time. And as designated by the petitions that you previously received, the improvements will be funded through special assessments that will be paid by the benefit district. So those properties that are in the boxes that were shown on each one of those displays, and the city pays 5.3% of the street project due to our policy that the city at large pays for intersections. So the only piece that the city is paying for is the intersection of the cul-de-sac, and I don't recall the name of the street, but
Looks like Summer Drive and Summer Court.
yes. And so we would ask that you would approve the plans and specifications and set the bid date, and then after the bid opening, we'll bring the bids back to you for approval, as is our normal process.
Okay.
I move that we approve what you just said.
Okay.
I will second.
Does that need to be 2 separate or is one? Yeah, it needs to be 2 separate. So we need a motion to approve the plans and
This
specifications.
is for A.
Okay.
We have a motion and a
And a
second.
second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, that carries. So then we need a motion to set the bid date and time for December 21st,
At 2 p.m.
2 p.m.
I so move.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, that motion carries. Thank you, Suzanne.
Thank you.
Ernie, are you going to take this one, Kelly?
Yeah, we sure can. Yeah.
Next is to consider appointments to the Newton Land Bank.
Yes, and again, I apologize. Zach was not able to be here today, so I will pinch hit for him. You get the B team. You may recall several meetings back, you approved an ordinance that created the ability for Newton to have a land bank. And, oh, excuse me, just one moment. If I don't push this, it'll shut our tech down. Excuse me. Don't work with me. There we go. Okay, crisis averted. Okay, so you approved an ordinance that created the Newton Land Bank, and as part of that process, we now need to appoint a board that will oversee the land bank. Typically, that board is made up of individuals that either represent the governing body, sometimes there are staff members that are appointed to that. In our case, you have your recently appointed at the end of last year about this time, Community Development Commission that is doing business as Choose Newton. And so after some discussions with Choose Newton membership and also with you all and amongst staff, it has become a recommendation that we would like for you to move forward with not necessarily specific persons to appoint at this time, but positions and representation. And so we would like to ask that you would consider utilizing the membership of the Community Development Commission, Choose Newton, which has 5 voting members and then several ex officios. The ex officios are myself as the city manager, Pam Stevens at the chamber, Rebecca Lickiardopoulos through Revitalization and Preservation, and Beth Shelton through the Harvey County EDC. And your voting members on the Community Development Commission are Ms. Casey Powell, representing the Chamber of Commerce. She is the chair. Mr. Sal Lujano from Entrust Bank. He is the vice chair. Commissioner Cry as the representative from the City Commission. And then also Mr. Al Votes as a representative of a downtown business owner and also construction and development industry. And then you also have Mr. Ben Mabry, who works for PEC Engineering, and he is an engineer. And so you've got some great expertise filling those positions. You also had elected to appoint a few additional members. You had specifically requested that you would like representation from other interested parties that might be interested in revitalization of properties in the community, and that would consist of 1 representative from Habitat for Humanity. And then, Chris, help me out, who am I forgetting? There's one...
Board of Realtors.
Yeah, Board of Realtors, yes. So we would approach the Harvey County Board of Realtors, so that way we would have expertise in banking, in real estate, in construction, in engineering, in design, and in housing of all types, as well as a representative from the governing body. Have I missed anyone, sir? Yeah, that sounds good. Yep. So we would just ask that you would appoint those particular positions, and then we will approach Habitat and the real estate, the Harvey County Association of Realtors, and ask them to please bring forward a member that we would bring back to you to appoint.
Those 5 individual capacities.
Yes.
Not the board itself.
Yes, yeah, the Community Development Commission. So that commission may change. We're going to designate, as those members cycle on and off, or if someone leaves. For example, former Commissioner Barth Hague was on there, and then when he moved out of state, we had to backfill his position. So, yes, excuse me, sir, go ahead.
Yeah, exactly what Kelly says. You will make those changes in correspondence with any changes on the CDC, but you will actually appoint those 5 members in their individual capacities. They're the same people. I think we're saying the same thing.
Yes.
Okay.
So then there'll be 7 voting members and 4 ex officio.
Yes, and ex officios, we will just be there to advise, and of course, Zach will be the primary staff member and liaison for the bank.
So the motion that you would need today would be for us to direct you to formulate that board.
Yeah, I think an appropriate motion would be the 5 that had been designated and instruct staff to come back with the particular names for those remaining 2 slots, and you can finalize your appointments at that time.
Yeah, what he said.
So I move what he said.
Yeah, would I be conflicted since I'm on there?
No, you should not be. And in fact, in some communities, the city commission or city council actually serves concurrently as the land bank, just as you all currently also concurrently serve as.
On this vote?
He means on this vote.
Oh, because you're on the Community Development Commission.
No, okay.
No, you are good. And like Kelly says, the statutes and our ordinance provides that the city commission could do it themselves. You could appoint members. You're good on that.
Okay.
No problem.
Great question. Thank you, sir.
Okay, so I have a motion.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, that motion carries.
Thank you much. We will bring back those specific names for you.
Next item this afternoon is to discuss the December meeting schedule.
Yes, and I will start that off, and our esteemed clerk will correct me if I get the wrong days. So your typical meetings are, of course, the 2nd and 4th Tuesdays of the month, and in November and December, that typically creates a conflict on the holiday weeks. Your next meeting is scheduled for Tuesday, December 14th, and that will occur at 7 p.m. as regularly scheduled. We have had a couple of options. The next meeting would be December 28th. That is, of course, the week between Christmas and New Year's. Sometimes in the past, we have canceled that meeting if there was no pending business and just had a heavier meeting, the first meeting in December, or the first meeting in January. So that would be an option. We have also moved that meeting to noon during the day instead of the evening because there are so many activities going on during those holiday weeks in the evenings. So that would be an option for you. You could decide to just tentatively move it to noon, and then if there's not enough business, we could cancel going forward. So you kind of have all of these options right now. So we would recommend going forward with our normal meeting, December 14th, normal time at 7 p.m. It's the 28th that might be in question. Do you have a preference?
I'd be open for a noon meeting on the 28th, and then if there's not enough business, just canceling it. when we
I
get
would as
closer.
well.
I think that's a good plan to go forward with, is a noon on the 28th, and then come the 23rd, or the 22nd.
Yeah.
We would know by then.
Yep, you know by the 22nd.
Awesome. Commissioner?
That works for me.
Commissioner?
I would so move.
I
We have-
second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you very much.
That gives Adam more time to.
All righty. Last item today is the Citizens Forum, and we did not have anybody sign up.
I think there's a gentleman that wanted
Go
to
ahead
speak.
and sign up real quick. And the process would be to go ahead and take the podium, state your name and address, please.
My name is Trinity Muth. I live at 7460 Northeast 36th Street here in Newton, Kansas. And I appreciate you guys giving me the opportunity to talk. I've talked to a few of you already. And when I first came in, I started listening to the school board and the tax revenue and everything else. I was like, oh, this is going to be kind of small potatoes for what you guys are talking about. But it kind of falls right in line with what you are talking about. I own Sand Creek Event Center. We recently bought Dock 44. We're going to try to do some remodel and try to bring that up to I guess at least a better appearance for the community. But I also own T&M Fireworks. We sell out of our Sand Creek Event Center business. And I'm bringing this to your guys' attention because it's all about tax revenue as well. And ultimately, the season that has been the last couple of years has been, I think, July 1st through the 5th. And it actually puts not only myself, but all the tents that come to this town in a competitive disadvantage. It puts the emergency response team in a competitive disadvantage as well. And the reason for that is because, as they talked about earlier with the supply chain and everything else, product is harder to get. Talked to Andy Harder at great length. The last year, I was close to partnering up with them because they couldn't get product. And this year, we're going to talk, and I'm going to try to help the ERT. I'm a prosecutor. I've been in law enforcement for going on 18 years, so law enforcement is important to me as well. Not only my business, but them as well. So what I'm asking this board to consider is the fact that we're losing tax revenue. For instance, we have a location in Mound Ridge, Kansas. We're not open on June 27th when everyone else is open, Burton, Mound Ridge, Sedgwick County, the surrounding communities. But I have a lot of people that will come into my parking lot. They're trying to get into the door. They're like, hey, we want to spend $2,000. We want to spend $5,000. We want to buy fireworks. We're going out of town. And ultimately, I tell them, sorry, I'm not going to lose my permit. We can't do it. Please come back on the 1st. And yet they tend to say, well, we got to buy them now. We're not coming back. The media, some people think that it helps to say that there's a shortage of fireworks. But for Newton, Kansas, it's a competitive disadvantage because the people that live here, they go off to Wichita because they're shopping or they work there or everything else. And ultimately, they buy their fireworks. They come into our store and they're like, oh man, I wish we had waited. Your prices are so much better. I can tell you that we're building a business that is pretty lucrative as far as sales for this community. And I'm asking that you guys consider allowing us to have the state season of June 27th through July 4th. And I understand that that may be in contrast or conflict with a lot of, or not a lot of people, but some people that don't want a lot of shooting going on. And that's perfectly fine. That's not saying that we have to shoot the entire time. You can set the shooting regulations for June 30th through the 4th or July 1st through the 4th. But the people that are problematic are going to be the people that are problematic. They're going to go into Wichita. They're going to buy it. They're going to come back here and they're going to shoot illegally if they're not allowed to shoot. It's not going to stop anything. The only thing that we're doing is we're sending tax revenue to other communities. And I'll just give you, for instance, in my Moundridge location, I sent a 5-figure, not in one cell, but 5-figure dollar amount to Moundridge. All that tax revenue went to McPherson County. It didn't go to Harvey County, didn't go to the city of Newton. And so if I'm asking that we look at it and apply a little bit of common sense as far as the tax revenue dollars are concerned and keep that here in Newton, Kansas, where I live, where I raise my family, where my wife lives, and not send that to other communities, because that's kind of what we're doing right now. There's nothing that would be nothing that's a disadvantage of allowing us to sell from June 27th through July 4th, especially if we restrict the fireworks shooting timeframe from June 30th or July 1st through the 4th. We don't want to restrict it to just the 4th because we want tax revenue coming in as well. We want them to go out and have some fun, come back, buy more fireworks, and continue on. So again, I know this is small potatoes compared to your library business, but it's just another way to give us a competitive advantage to the other communities so that our taxpayer dollars aren't going elsewhere. And I can tell you that I've got people coming from Winfield, I got people coming from Arc City, I got people coming from Wichita, everywhere around us coming to our location, and that will only continue to grow. That will only continue to put tax revenue into the city of Newton and not other counties or cities. So I appreciate your guys' time. I don't know what the process is, if you have any questions, but if not, I'd look forward to coming back when you guys do vote on it and answering any questions at that time. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And Mr. Muth, just for your benefit and that of the audience, I would just tell you the process real quick. The commission does not take action on anything under citizens forum, especially when we have a special call meeting. By state law, we can only take action on literally whatever is on the agenda. Typically, Ms. Denise, when do we usually make those calls for this?
So we would make that call either at the next meeting or the first meeting in January. We will set that so that the vendors have enough time to order and get their supplies in. So
It's very timely.
Yeah, it's a very timely conversation.
Is that
yeah.
something that will be put on the website so I know, or?
Yes, yeah, so if it
It'll
is.
be on our agenda.
Yeah, if it's on the agenda for, the next meeting is December 14th. If it's on that agenda, this whole thing gets posted to the website the Thursday, usually Thursday evening or Friday morning, the week before the meeting. Yes, sir. Or we'd be happy to, I have your contact information. I will be glad to notify you directly if you'd like.
Thank you. Thank you, guys.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, without any other action, this meeting is adjourned.